Reverend Dr. Janette Wilson, the National Executive Director of Push for Excellence. With me today, I am pleased to have my board co-chairs, Judge Greg Mathis to my left, Ms. Pat Harris, my board president, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, my board members, Attorney Joyce Tucker, Mr. Joe Moore. And I am also pleased to have standing behind me, standing tall, our founder and international president of the Rainbow Push Coalition, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. Oh, I forgot one board member, Mr. Tyrone Studemeyer, who coordinated our corporate breakfast this morning. Give my board members a round of applause.
Let me express my thanks. There are a number of educators and participants who are here. I want to introduce themselves, starting to my right. Dr. Whitaker.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sonia Whitaker. I'm the newly appointed Deputy Superintendent of Schools for Dalton Riverdale School District 148.
I'm Dr. Vaughn Mansfield. I'm the superintendent at Homewood Flossmoor High School District.
I'm Chip Johnson, Chief of Family and Community Engagement and Education at Chicago Public Schools.
Melissa Washington, I'm here representing ComEd. I participated in the corporate panel this morning.
I'm Baxter Goodley. I'm here representing Airmark, and I also participate in the panel this morning. Abe Thompson with the City Colleges of Chicago, Kennedy King College.
Let me express my thanks to all of those who are here today for this 65th anniversary of the 1954 decision. It had ramifications far beyond the school, but it started from the school. Over 1954, segregation was legal in public accommodations, in denial of voter access, in every aspect of American life. That decision redirected the course of American history. And it was supposed to, at its premise, to desegregate schools. They found that some schools, African American, had one class, one teacher for 7 classes, and pot better stove in the middle and all of that, in contrast to the central high schools of the town. It was the Booker Washington School, and that was the white school, or the Lincoln School and the white school. They had physics and chemistry and foreign languages and swimming pools and the like. And we grew weary of that arrangement of race segregation. Today it's evolved to resource segregation. That disparity between the resource and race is even wider than it was 65 years ago. Go to the inner city Harper High School in Chicago or to Marshall High, and then go to the Nikole Valley, you see a story of 2 schools. The worst part is that they take the same exam. One scores high and goes to Champaign, University of Illinois. One scores low and can hardly make it to a community college. We must challenge that again legally and in the streets. We can no longer accept the fact that our children are being denied access to equal education, and yet they're expected to perform superior services. So we've come to put a focus on that today with the suburbs and the cities. Among other things, we want all those who are 18 years old to go to class, go to graduate this spring, vote a card in one hand and the diploma in the other, begin to empower themselves. Our Rainbow Push, Youth Empowerment, Youth Crusade, that's 4,000 in Chicago alone and about 10,000 in the suburbs, and 4 million nationally. It really means that our teachers are underpaid, and there's a struggle now led by Kamala Harris to raise teacher pay, which we embrace while in a big way. But I think the biggest dimension I would challenge the press, go to an inner city at Harper High School, go to Nikole, and in contrast to, if you just cover who got shot at the school, or cover the fact that the mayor closed 50 public schools. Around those schools, the community value went down, the value of houses went down, the danger increased. You go to Nikole Valley, they advertise in the papers, houses near the school. Houses are values up because near the school. Well, we are values down because schools have closed. So we come to protest that arrangement. We, in fact, know that race segregation was bad. Resource and race segregation is even worse. So thank you very much. Questions?
We have no reporters are here, so whatever you want to talk about.
Can you compare
Our next session starts.
the Board of, the decision compared today to the schools? How equal and unequal are they?
Well, we know that ignorance is the antidote to intelligence in education. We're now grappling with the Alabama case, for example. It has so much meaning to us. The same state that never made lynching a state crime. 324 blacks in Alabama were lynched without one conviction, for example. They will not teach sex education. Sex education is a stimulant, it is a sin. They will not support Medicaid. For the poor, they will not increase teacher pay. So we are able to play football in Alabama and Auburn, and basketball, and generate capital for the schools, but not a first-class education, not protection of women have the right to self-determination. We must teach that. And if we're going to have a plan to deal with women, unless you deal with men and vasectomy, you're kind of being imbalanced in the process.
That's right. There you go. Our next session.
It's 2019. Why are we dealing with the same problems that we've historically dealt with, even at this time?
Two reasons. One, because racism has not gone away. It changed its colors, but not its character. Number two, it's going away because those who did not want one school system for all children are driven out by tax base rather than the worth of the student base. So if you become a high tax base district, you get a better education than you get if you go to a low tax base. The whites tend to have a high tax base because they have a higher salary and higher education. So it's just a maneuver that amounts to second-class citizenship. When we play basketball tonight, you'll see that when Team A plays Team B, we excel because the court is even. Rules are public, goals are clear, referees are fair, and the score is transparent. And that should be in education. We see March Madness, but May Sadness. In March, we're generating millions of dollars for the corporations and images for the schools, but come graduation time, we're sparse. So we see a whole generation of exploitation taking place. And that's why there's been perpetuated, because some people make money from segregation.
The problem is with the resources, the segregation of resources. How do we change that if that is the real problem?
It violates the spirit of the law of 54. We must go back to court and get another court ruling on it. I want Judge Mathis to speak to it because, among other things, Judge Mathis is now setting an example of where abandoned, thrown away youth come back to do so well. I must say that Courtney in Decatur. Courtney Carson. They threw him away several years ago, and 3 kids, a little 17-second school fight, no guns, no nothing. They threw them away. We protested, we went to jail and created quite a ruckus. He finished school, finished college, finished seminary. He is now on the school board that threw him away. One of his classmates ran for sheriff, and it being politically motivated and conscious. He lost by 99 votes. When Appleton was counted, he won by 1 vote, engaged in the process. And Judge Mathis, we met Judge Mathis in jail, not as a visitor, but as a resident. His journey from jail to judgeship, it says to us, our children are worth the investment and the risk. Judge Mathis.
Thank you, Reverend, fellow board members, Janette, Reverend Wilson. Let me say that today I'm both inspired and feel challenged at the progress that we've made in the last day, 24 hours perhaps, and the future struggle that we intend to win. The fact is, every time, as Reverend says, we fight, we win. And we fought this time to get an equal education, an equal opportunity, and the SAT joined us in establishing a policy yesterday that gives points to applicants to colleges, gives them points on their SAT for their social economic challenges that they've served as young people, and they recognize that need because they've seen the history of other young people who leave social and economic disadvantaged backgrounds and either get stuck after beginning or they never make it there at all. As Reverend has said, I was a product of affirmative action. Dropped out of school, 11th grade, went back for a GED, 15 years later, the youngest judge in Michigan history. And that's because I had the opportunity made through affirmative action, which we see yesterday's result as a step toward reinstating that. At least we're going to fight for that. The U.S. Supreme Court, no doubt, will be hearing an affirmative action case in the next 24 months. And we just hope that they will understand that the SAT is right, that we're right, and that the cheaters are wrong. The cheaters being those who have bought privilege,
That's right.
who have bought access because of the way they bounce the ball or their children bounce the ball, the legacy access because your mother went there, your father went there, and then now we see financial corruption being another avenue to continue to disadvantage status that the privileged enjoy. And so those fights we're grateful for. We're grateful for the wins thus far, and we look forward to continuing to fight back and continuing to win. Any questions for me?
Lastly, just
Why don't you explain the economics of racism? What's the positive? If there's economic side to it, there has to be a pro and con. What's the positive of racism in education?
Why don't we get our economics genius here, the president.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Reverend, and thank you, my board members. People make money from racism. Follow the money. We live in a predatory capitalist system where people are extracting surplus value from us. When you look at Ferguson as an example, the fines on top of the fines on top of the fines, well, who was getting that money? Somebody was benefiting from that. There's just an ordinance passed in Alabama where before you can vote, you must pay your debt and 30% collection fee. A 30% collection fee. Now, who benefits from that? So whenever you ask, the economics of racism are such that people benefit from racism. Incarceration is a big business. The Corrections Corporation of America is a publicly traded company. Their job is to maximize profits. If they're maximizing profits, they are minimizing the services that they provide to the inmates. Now, these inmates are human beings who get less good food. There's several books that have been written about just the quality of food that people are served. Not even balanced meals. They don't get any, fruits and vegetables or anything like that. Education, they've stripped education out of the schools. Judge Mathis, you remember when people could get degrees while they were incarcerated. That has almost been eliminated. They could actually get Pell Grants to help them get their degree, not because it was a giveaway, but because it was a way for them to return as productive citizens. All of that has been eliminated. So racism is a profit-making enterprise. Reverend Jackson and others have been working, the Congress just passed some legislation outlawing lynching. But if you look at the history of lynching, many people would have you believe that lynching is about interracial relationships. Lynching is about economic envy. The first lynching that Ida B. Wells covered was one where a black man opened a grocery store across the street from a white man. White man wasn't having it, went and shot the man's store up. And then he and two other workers were lynched, because they had the temerity to basically challenge this capitalist system. I could go on, but I won't. I will say a couple of things, however, about our day-to-day, which I'm so excited. Reverend Jackson has been on us for 2 years to have our Education Day on the anniversary of Brown versus Board of Ed. And Rev, just from this morning, from the panel we saw this morning, we hope to be able to do this annually. Brown versus Board of Ed basically said separate but equal was illegal. However, when we look at the resource gap is a function, someone asked earlier, it's a function of the wealth gap, which is a function of racism. What we have to do is pass H.R. 40, which is a legislation for reparations. We must have reparations. We must make sure that that wealth gap closes so the resource gap closes as well. So we're delighted and excited to be here. There's so many education issues we're going to cover. We've got a great keynote speaker in Nikole Hannah-Jones, New York Times award-winning writer who's written about these issues. So we're very excited about the day. But we know that as we talk about higher education, Push Excel has given away millions of dollars in scholarships thanks to Reverend Jackson. We know the cost of higher education is going up and access is going down. So we really have a lot of work to do. We are grateful to you, our colleagues in the press, and hope that you will give us wide coverage. Thank you.
Let me say lastly, the reparations has become a hot button issue these days. Just repair for damage done. For blacks, for 246 years, it was illegal to learn to read or write. If a master beat his male slave, it was his right, or raped his female slave, it was his right. If he caught teaching him to read or write, he could be jailed. They knew the conflict between education and slavery. Out of that came Jim Crow, 5,000 lynchings, making education again illegal. So today we fight to repair the damage done. That means we must demand first-class education. I want to thank Dr. Whitlock and Brother Chip from Chicago school system. We're cooperating, bringing city and suburb together on the basic premise of educating our children as a priority. We want parents. We're going to have a new mayor, we must have a new attitude at every level. We want parents to take your child to school, meet your child's teacher, exchange home numbers, turn up the TV 3 hours a night, pick up report cards every 9 weeks, and take your child to church, temple or synagogue once a week. All that's a part of changing our minds about education. Thank you very much. Any other questions? We have to go to work now.
Yeah, we have the next.
Thank you, guys. Janette, let's wrap the next workshop.
In just a few minutes in the room next door, we're going to convene several K-12 educators, and we're going to look at the gaps in education. We're going to talk about the funding gaps, the resource gaps, and then we're going to look at what we must do to change both at the legislative level, the conditions of the schools that our students are forced to attend. We have the city and the suburban superintendents represented and principals here today. And we look forward to a powerful session that will be moderated by Dr. Sonia Whitaker. Then following that, we have a luncheon with Ms. Nikole Hannah-Jones, who will really give us, she will trace the history of Brown versus the Board of Education 65 years later. Where are we? And then after the lunch, we have a powerful roundtable with higher education. Dr. Janice Jackson will be here this morning from the Chicago Public Schools, and this afternoon we have 3 colleges and 2 city colleges will be represented on the panel. Chicago State University, Northeastern Illinois University, and 2 of the city colleges of Chicago, Malcolm X, and Kennedy King. So as we have some powerful discussions, and then we're going to close with our action items, what public policies we're going to support, and we're going to revisit what Reverend Jackson did almost 30 years ago when he compared the tale of 2 schools, Neuqua Valley and Harper High, DuSable, and another suburban school district. We're going to show a quick video clip of that so you can get a context of our struggle today. Thank you so much.